call the meeting to order at 6:06 p.m. First agenda item is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next agenda item is correspondence, visitors, and public comments. And do we have anybody online?
We do not.
We do not. Okay.
Jen, could I just reintroduce for anyone who might not have heard during our last meeting? This is April Still. April is a leadership student and is doing an internship with me this year. So she's here observing tonight.
Excellent.
Most of you met her virtually at one of our last meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. All right. Agenda review.
So we need to add the Vermont School Board Association annual meeting voting delegate. Dawn reminded us of that after the agenda was already warned, so my apologies for that. Does anyone have, all I have to do is write in an early draft of minutes and submit it for this week to VSTA. Would I send it to Carrie Lamb, Dawn?
What's that?
Would I send it to Carrie Lamb?
Yeah, it's just a Carrie Lamb.
Okay, just if the board is willing to make a motion appointing one of the folks attending to be a voting delegate at that annual meeting,
Which is Thursday.
which is Thursday.
Who's going?
Where do we want to add that to the agenda? Don and
Dawn and
Rennick will
Rennick.
both be there.
Yep.
Where, Jen, do you want to put that on the agenda? Under approval of minutes or?
Yes.
All right.
What are we gonna call it?
VSB voting delegate. Appointment.
All right, next agenda item is the approval of minutes from October 10th.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from October 10th.
Thank you, Peter's the first. Do you have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Devin. Any comments or changes? All right, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay. All those opposed? All right, so motion will carry 7-1-0.
I abstained.
7-2.
Oh, two,
Sorry.
6-2-0.
602.
602, sorry. Get out of vacation brain here.
Yeah. Sorry.
All right. Next, we have the administrative reports.
Are you gonna nominate?
Yes.
Oh, the not, yep. Vacation brain. Like. Next, we have the VSBA voting delegate appointment.
Dawn, can you explain what it is? What, for those that don't go to the meeting regularly?
Yes, please.
Resolutions, budget, is the main things that will happen. And I think we have a resolution there in our district.
They never reached out to me. That's exciting.
Yeah, well, I'll have to check, but the last I knew it was in process, but who knows? You don't know until you see the printed booklet.
So this is a Vermont School Board Association? Is that what we're talking about?
Yes.
I did hear you, Peter.
We're talking about the Vermont School Board Association
Yes,
meeting?
the annual meeting.
Annual meeting.
Annual meeting of school boards and superintendents. Superintendents, I think, come in earlier.
No, we'll be meeting Thursday afternoon, probably at the same time that you folks will have your meeting.
Just before they open the bar. That's on the superintendent's meeting. They can't meet until after, they can't open the bar until after superintendents come in.
And the school board members.
At the school board, particularly the chair people.
So we're looking to nominate a delegate to represent our board?
Yes, you do it every year. We usually do it the same time we do the proxy because I'll be going to the VHI meeting
Yeah.
the next morning, and the VSBIT meeting. And every year Dawn reminds me we need to do it, and I think we need to move up the I have to put it, I think I'll put it in the board calendar so that, you know, we do it in October at the beginning of the month.
Do I have a nomination?
I was just gonna, can I nominate Dawn? I'd like to nominate Dawn.
Any other nominations? Do I have a second for Dawn?
I'll second.
Thank you, Peter. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion
And
carried.
any board member can come to that meeting. So, and I don't know if it's on Zoom this year, they've gone back and forth. If you've ever been to Lake Maury, they don't have the best reception for cell phones or anything connected to media. But anyway, if it is, you're on Zoom, but you can come. It's just that each district gets one vote on the matters.
Motion carried 7-0, Julie. Then we have the administrative reports. And we have principal appreciation.
I'm going to share that.
Please.
Too many tabs. Sorry, everyone. I say this every meeting.
All right. October is National Principal Appreciation Month. The Champlain Valley Superintendent Association would like to collectively honor the remarkable individuals who lead our schools with courage, resourcefulness, and dedication. Principals are the essentials of the backbone of our educational system, showcasing their ability as equity-driven leaders who often act as brave visionaries, navigating challenges in order to ensure the well-being and success of every student. They approach their work with curiosity, creativity, and a high degree of collaboration so that our public education system can thrive. Serving the Vermont counties of Addison, Chittenden, Franklin, and Grand Isle, our principals deserve recognition for all their unwavering commitment to the betterment of our schools and the future of our students. So during this month, let's express gratitude for our principals and their invaluable contributions to education, which would be Chris and Yeshua and Joyce and Dan and Christy.
And Justine?
And just
Justina, yes. It should say principals and vice principals, I think that
Well,
goes.
they all have
Yeah.
principal licenses.
Yeah.
And they all
So-
are principals in our school.
Yes, we definitely would like to thank all of you. Oops. All right.
Thank you for that, John.
You're welcome. Then we have Franklin, Highgate, and Swanton administrative reports, and we'll start with Swanton with Chris. Does anybody have any questions or comments that they would like to give Chris or Justina?
I'm almost good for a comment, but somebody else ready to go first.
Go ahead, Don.
I'm going to start off by giving a commendation to our administration. I don't think it's probably just Chris that was involved in this, but I realize he's the principal and writes the Wednesday Weekly. But to reach out, we talk a lot as board members about reaching out to our community and community engagement. And when I read this after coming off our retreat on Saturday, I thought, you know, here's a very good example of what we should be doing more of, and that's engaging people in the community, whether it's on Indigenous Peoples Day or the different groups that we mentioned in our planning. So I want to commend the Swanton administration for making that happen. Looks like it was a participatory day.
other questions or comments?
I wonder, the Indigenous People Day, I thought that was really nice, especially with the heritage here and stuff. Didn't know maybe if you wanted to comment on that a little more and how the students and children reacted to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the really exciting things about Indigenous Peoples Day here this year was folks have done a lot of stuff in the past. Swanton has a really rich history with Indigenous Peoples Day, but really for the first time this year, there was a kind of a clear expectation that this was going to happen in every classroom, and every classroom teacher signed up so that we could document the different ways that folks were addressing that. So we're really celebrating that this happened in every single one of our classrooms this year. And what was great about that was to see the variety of ways that teachers chose to do that. A lot of credit to Jeff Benet and some curriculum resources that he was able to push out. Teachers took advantage of that. He shared some video links with us. We had a number of guests that came in and read books with students and did projects with students. And so I think the celebration was it happened across the board in every classroom and with tremendous variety in the way that people approached it.
So was the after-school program, did they participate in the after-school program?
We were going to, and Jeff and I had a conversation about how it was a very long day for our educators that were focusing on Indigenous Peoples Day. So they did not come to visit us, but we did do a couple activities to honor Indigenous Peoples Day after school.
Anybody else? All right. Let's move on to Joyce with Franklin, please.
I'm wondering if Joyce could comment on, obviously a lot of construction, can she hear us? A lot of construction going on at the school and how that is affecting school as far as learning.
Well, I think my goal,
Ask Julie. My goal is to make sure that we absolutely minimize any disruption to learning. So that one of the big decisions we made at the beginning was how we didn't move any kids into an area that might be noisy because of the construction. So with all of us, the other services, myself, school psychology, guidance counselor, nurse, and admin assistant in the library, no classes had to move. I think the biggest thing right now is when we already had such a lack of space, and now less space, just finding places all the time for tutoring to be happening or small groups to be happening. And people have just been incredibly flexible, kids and teachers and paraeducators, people are using the athletic room to do some small groups in. We're using, hallway again, the gymnasium when the gym's not being used. So really our goal has been to have the least disruption to kids learning. And I have to say though that everybody is so excited, especially this week when the wall went up last week and the with the windows, spaces for the windows, that was pretty cool. Very exciting. And so it just seems like it's becoming more and more real to everybody. And but we've definitely tried hard to not have it be disrupting. And we've been warned ahead of time if there's going to be anything that's going to be really loud. And I have to say, there's really not been anything, even being right where we are, that has really been a problem. And we're getting used to our cubicles and the white noise going all the time to try to make it as confidential as possible in those areas in the library. And again, everybody just really understands that it's all going to be wonderful when it's done, and we need to be flexible right now, and it's going really well, I think. So I'm definitely trying to make sure that everybody is just choosing to be grateful, because it's all going to be wonderful in the end.
Anybody else have any questions or comments for Joyce?
I'd like to thank Joyce for the tone that she's setting on this project. I've done a few of these, and if you don't stay on the positive side, it kind of wears people down. So thank you for that enthusiastic, positive attitude and statements. That'll carry you a long time, but you have a long time through the year, so good job.
Thank you, Don.
Anybody else? Well, thank you very much, Joyce. We appreciate. And we're going to move on next to Yeshua, please.
Yeshua, can you hear us?
Oh, yeah, sorry, I thought I was waiting for questions.
Oh. Does anybody have any questions or comments for Yeshua for his reports? Or just any questions, period?
Yeshua, is there anything from your report that you want to highlight to us?
I'm trying to remember
I
now.
put in there, which sounds sad. I think we're really starting to gain some momentum with the outdoor classroom. I can't remember if I put that in the last one or this one. And so we're seeing a lot of kiddos out there, which is really great. We've also, I also can't remember if I put this in there, but we've been really talking with the facilities subcommittee of the board around needing some cameras outside because we have seen some vandalism. And I was really happy to see that being supported. So I really appreciate that because I've definitely been concerned that the 4 years I've been here, we probably had the most vandalism that I've seen. And I don't know, we're really in a good place with, a lot of our local assessments have happened and our classroom assessments, and it feels like now intervention is really up and rolling and it's informing instruction with the data and teachers are having a really good conversation about it. So it feels like a nice part of the year we're really rocking and rolling within instruction. So that's been really great. Sorry, you said 1 and I jumped to 3 and
Thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Joshua, this is Pete. I see you have the pictures from the fire prevention week. I always thought that was a great thing, and I've seen them doing it at Franklin, but I've never seen the kids actually using a fire hose. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And that's why I really tried to highlight Liza Comiskey too, because she's really passionate and she's great with the kids. So each grade level signs up for an hour-long slot in the day, and that's a half hour of a fire prevention and safety lesson. And then they get to go outside and play with the fire trucks. But they actually have different curricula for each grade level, and it's really cool that when you go and participate, you can see what the kids have learned and remembered. And so yeah, it's just really cool. And because of also it was Indigenous Peoples Day that Monday and fire prevention week, so it just felt like so many community members were just in our building interacting with kids, and it was really wonderful. But the volunteer fire department did really a phenomenal job. I think we had actually like 6 or 7 of them this year that attended, which is a lot. So they also help us with our walk to school days and making sure that we can cross 78 successfully. So lots to be thankful for from the fire department.
Yeshua, I just want to jump back to the outside classroom. My granddaughter is a first grader, and she just is completely intrigued with the outside classroom. She comes home and she talks about it all the time, which is great to hear. She's always positive about school up in Highgate anyways, but I think the outdoor classrooms for all the schools is really important. So just wanted to say thank you again for pushing for that. That was great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. I think we're also so fortunate to have Kurt, who comes and does a lot of that outdoor science education. And, recently posted something on Facebook with some pictures of actually both first grade classrooms out there with Kurt. And just some of the pictures just showed how cool it was for the students themselves. And there's one picture of one young lady holding a skull and just this look of excitement as she's checking it out. So it's really cool. And I just think the idea of just being outside, there's just something about that where they're learning there and just understanding there's so much to learn outside as well as inside the building. So it's been really exciting.
Anybody else, questions or comments?
Jen, before we leave, I don't know if this is fair game, Chris will tell me if it's not, but I'd like to hear from our administrative intern, how she's feeling about it, being here.
Great. No, so far I've been able to spend 5 days in Swanton, full days. And it's been really great. It's a nice, positive, welcoming environment coming in as an outsider. Those are things I kind of look for. Part of my leadership project is going to be on staff retention and recruitment, just because, as we all know, across the state, country, it's a huge area. So it's been really nice to come in and get a different perspective from the district that I work in, to come in here and see how things are done, and kind of compare and contrast, and just get a vibe for how the staff and how Chris interacts with his staff, and then kind of looking at other interactions that people have with their administrators. And it's so far been a really positive and great experience. So
April and I have a fun prior connection. April's from Fletcher, where I came from. And so April's son was at Fletcher Elementary when I was the principal there. So we've known each other in a couple of capacities.
yes, we have. We've also worked together too when I was at another, I worked at SOAR Learning Center for a couple of years. So we also worked together. He was my son's principal and really worked together to have to create those boundaries. But I think we did a pretty good job.
It's really nice, just from my perspective, to have the opportunity to work with someone. I think I get as much out of that as April does. I hope so.
Yeah.
It's a really positive thing, I think.
Thank you.
Thank you, Yeshua. I hope you and Joyce have a good night. You can log off if you would like, and we appreciate it. Thank you. Next agenda item is presentations and discussion items, and we will start with the Swanton math update.
Sure. So for folks that might not know, this is Jess Borbo. Jess is our math coach. So she does a whole lot of things, way more than I have time to talk about, but is spending time with all of our teachers, especially a lot of our new teachers, and across the board helping folks transition from our prior math program to the math program that we're using this year, and has also done a lot of coordination of math professional development recently. So she's going to talk a bit about the transition in math programs.
I'm excited to talk about math.
Okay, I'm doing it.
So did you like math as a student?
My favorite teacher was a math teacher. I don't know that I loved math, but I one of my favorite things is when I can get kids to love math. So the title of this presentation is Illustrative Mathematics. That's where I'm going to focus, is more about this newer program. But what I want to be really clear about is that I'm going to talk a little bit about how math is in school right now, and I'll compare and contrast a little bit around what it was like and what it is now. You're going to notice a lot of similarities, way more similarities than differences, but I think the differences are important to recognize for our teachers and for our students too. So I'm going to focus a little bit on why, how did we arrive at illustrative mathematics as a district, how we rolled that out to teachers and students, and then what's new with that particular program. So why illustrative mathematics? I was told I have not a whole lot of time. So in a nutshell, this is like 2 years worth of work right here. So what was brought to our attention was that we really should start thinking about vertically aligning our district. And there wasn't a single one of us who was like, right? Of course we want
a K-12 curriculum, a program that runs through, so that we do have these models, or we have these ideas that go from kindergarten or even pre-K all the way up to our high school, our middle and high school. And we don't want that disconnect for our kids. And so that was a big driving force. We decided right from the beginning to make sure that we've got this really thoughtful, methodical plan, that we weren't just spinning our wheels and wasting time. This was during the pandemic, so 2020 is when we started. I'll put a timeline up there in a minute. We didn't have a lot of time. We didn't have a lot of face-to-face time, so it needed to be done really well from the beginning. It's a lot of money, and it's a lot of time, and our kids' learning was on the line, and so we wanted to make sure we were super thoughtful, and that meant going back to our philosophy and what we really felt like math classes should be. Coaches, so the coaches from each of the math coaches from each of the elementary school and the middle and high school coach really went right to ed reports, which is really just a location where there are other experts who rate programs on rubrics and really rigorous rubrics. And then we started really making lots of phone calls, Zoom calls, to reps, but also to authors. So we recognized from the beginning as well that there was a big difference between people who were trying to sell the program and people who wrote the program. And those were different entities completely. Colleagues, so we had colleagues from different districts that we were checking in with that taught different math programs, and we just were trying to kind of bend their ear a little bit and ask them some questions about what they liked or didn't like about their particular program and how it was working for their kids. The director of the Vermont Math Institute came and worked with us for a bit and really helped us dig deep into some of the core nuts and bolts of a math program and what we should be really thinking about. So taking a strand like additive reasoning and really thinking about that and looking at how that goes through K-12, starting with whole numbers and looking at fractions and decimals and really thinking thoughtfully about that and multiplicative and being really careful about how models are used in those areas. And then really just making phone calls to other schools. We narrowed it down to 3. We taught some lessons. I was actually going through VMI at the time, and we had lesson studies where we had to look at a variety of programs. And so part of that was just to look and teach one lesson from each program at a particular grade level to get a feel for what it would be like as a teacher using that particular program and then seeing the reaction from those kids firsthand. That was really helpful. Like I said, we analyzed threads. We really looked at additive reasoning or multiplicative reasoning throughout grade levels. And then we made more Zoom calls and phone calls. We really needed to tease out one program in particular, and it was the one we chose in regards to authors and programs, because we had learned that one of the publishers was divorced or separated from that, and that made us really nervous. We learned later that the writer was the one that we wanted to go with because the publisher wasn't allowed to use their material anymore because of something that they did or that something they refused to do. So that was really important to us, that they really stuck with their roots, and we wanted a publisher that would continue with the writers, the people who we were really after. We got really picky. So when we found illustrative is published by at least 3 different publishers. We chose Imagine Learning, and we love it. We absolutely love it, and I'll tell you why we do afterwards. So this was our checklist. So we really came up with some core beliefs around our philosophy. Obviously, we really wanted to make sure that all students felt like they could learn math. We wanted all students to be learning math. We wanted kids to see math as relevant and purposeful. We wanted it to be engaging. Those were some of the philosophies we had. We talked about what are some of the critical components we expect in a program as far as warm-ups, and we needed some pre and post assessments, we needed some formative assessments, we needed some hands-on material for kids to actually be doing the math. Some of the gaps that we knew we needed to fill, scheduling was something I know that the middle and high school spoke about with block scheduling. Sometimes if a kid is getting math every other day in the high school, that was really tricky for some of them to be retaining some of that material. So that was a gap that we knew we needed to be thoughtful about. And then other things that we thought that we might want to also have included was something for intervention and special ed. We really needed to make sure that we had some kind of diagnostics or a program that we didn't have to go hunt and look for games, that had games that went with the program and was embedded right in with what kids were learning. So those were some of the things we filled out in each of those categories. And the rollout. So that 2020 to 2022, that's where really coaches were digging deep and really making sure that we were being mindful about what we were choosing and how we were choosing it. So last year was the 22-23 school year. That was where here in Swanton, and it was a little different in Swanton than it was in Highgate and in Franklin for various reasons, but our 4th through 6th grade fully implemented Imagine Learning. So that means every lesson, every day, it was fully implemented there. In K-3, it was only 1 unit for the whole year. And each of those grade levels, one representative from each of those grade levels went and visited Franklin, actually. They opened their classroom doors and let one person come and see what a lesson was like to kind of dip their toe in it. Each of those 4th through 6th grade teachers had PD. It was 3 different sessions with the writers. That's also important to recognize, not with the publisher. So the writers came and did some PD. It was actually, they didn't come, it was virtual because it was still that pandemic time at the beginning of the year in 2022. And we learned a lot. And those 4th through 6th grade teachers feel a whole lot better the second year than they did their very first year with it. But we learned a lot throughout the year last year. And part of the reason why we only did 4 through 6 was we had we had a bit of turnover. And in order for me to support the newer teachers and support these teachers in implementing it, I really felt like implementing it school-wide wasn't a wise idea because I didn't want anybody to feel like they weren't being supported. And I really worried about supporting them. And I think it really worked out well because 4 through 6 is now in their 2nd year and K through 3 is in their 1st, and they're loving it, they're doing a great job. They had PD at the end of last year, and their PD was in person at Highgate Elementary, a full day with a trainer, and then they also had a half day of just the digital support. So a day and a half at in-service before summer vacation, and then they had some PD with me this fall, and things are going pretty well, but I'll speak a little bit about that. So how are things going? So I really want to make sure that you understand what's the same as it always has been with Engage New York and what's a little bit different. So we still have 60-minute math classes. We still have a separate 30-minute math menu block. Our focus still is on building deep conceptual understanding with students. We still definitely are thoughtful and mindful of the high leverage concept at each grade level. Kids are still doing partner work, independent work. They still have whole group instruction. They still have practice through activities and worksheets. They're still taking notes, and there definitely still is a big focus on vocabulary and math. They're still working on fact fluency, and we still are sending home games for families to be able to engage with.
On the time, you've got 60-minute math classes, so is that every day?
Every day.
Wow, good.
What's a menu block?
A math menu? So math menu is a time for tier 2 instruction, which means that tier 2 or tier 3. So it means that if, let's just say I might have struggled a little bit with a lesson for that day, or I've struggled or shown any kind of not full understanding on cooldowns or exit tickets, my teacher could work with me on those particular things. Or if I knew my students were going to be working on adding and subtracting fractions next week, I might put in some of the fraction knowledge that they should already have from previous grade levels in that menu. So it's a way to brush the dust off or keep things from being rusty. It's never brand new teaching. It's also a great way to spiral review. So if I've already taught fractions, I might keep kids fresh with it during the math menu block. But the biggest reason for it is for teachers to be able to work with students in small groups. But kids have very respectful and engaging offerings while their teacher is working with a small group.
So let's say I'm a highly accomplished fourth grade in fractions. What do I do during the menu block?
It's a really great place to differentiate and get in some of that support too.
Good. I was hoping you would go.
We actually just had a talk about that at PLC last week. So what's different? That's going to be really important for us to know too. So one of the things that we love about this program is that there are daily visuals or slideshows. So if I'm teaching lesson 7 from unit 2, I have for every single day a set of slideshows that I can be showing visuals to students that are very thoughtful. Somebody already was super thoughtful about that, and I don't have to go and create all those on my own. That's really important for our first and second year teachers. That's providing equity across the board. That's incredibly important. They're so well thought out. I've got a couple of examples, and I'm happy to go through any of them with you. But that is huge. From a warm up all the way down to a cool down, that's there, and that's so helpful. Inspirational math videos. So these are like 30 seconds to a minute video that are throughout a particular unit where it directly connects it to something in the real world. Kids, my favorite video so far was in kindergarten. They were learning about math tools. And this was a video about how an ape was using this small little stick as a tool to get these ants out of a log. And it was just this beautiful connection about how we use tools in the real world all the time, and that we use math tools in math for a reason too. And it just was, they're beautiful connections, they're beautiful videos, and it does, especially in the upper grades, make kids think about math a little bit differently. And that really was important to us because of that how math is so applicable and how it just is so meaningful. Embedded activities. There is nothing more painful, I think, for a coach than going to the copier and seeing things from teacher pay teacher. And teachers don't have to do that as much anymore. And as a teacher, it's exhausting flipping through those teacher pay teacher things, looking for something that's just right. For your kids are having to create something from scratch. This program has particular activities in there that connects, and it's already there. They don't have to go spend time doing that. They can spend time on tailoring the lesson to kids rather than finding pieces of the lesson to bring to kids. Embedded centers and games, that was something also that we really felt was important. We need kids having practice with the math in an engaging way, and games help do that. And those are digital, so they can use their computers, but there's also, most of the digital ones have a paper-based one too. And then there's some that are just on paper. Those two little girls to the right are doing a game on that clipboard, and that isn't a digital version. Vertically aligned models, that is so incredibly important. And those models are so connected to magnitude. So it's not like those number bonds that just have the circle that maybe has a 23 and the 2 lines that come out of it. You know what I'm talking about? And the 20 and the 3. The 20 is so much more than 3, right? But they're the same size circles, and that's really hard for kids to understand and wrap their brains around. So the models we're looking for are ones that will carry kids from kindergarten all the way to 12th grade in various developmental ways. And then just more embedded hands-on experiences. Lots of sorts, all that kind of stuff.
Just before you go, leave that.
Sure. Yeah.
So I think this is great because I'd never heard of inspirational math videos before. When I took math, there was nothing inspirational. But I just think it's great, these activities, the games. Are you seeing, I don't know if excitement's the right word, but are you seeing more enthusiasm or more interest in math with these programs?
So to be really honest, and it could just be because kids see me coming in, they're like, oh, I automatically like math. I think math was pretty loved in Swanton even before. And I think it's a bit of a shift than maybe when I went to school.
Mm-hmm.
Like math was kind of boring and dull. Math isn't dull and boring anymore. And so I don't know that there's a big shift from last year to this year, because I think math is fun, but
A shift that I see in some places is not necessarily a student shift, but a teacher shift. And I think that that's really important too, because we talk about inspiration and motivation and enthusiasm and all that stuff as it relates to students, but that is equally as important with the folks that are presenting these materials to kids. And one of the things that Jess touched on that I think is really important is that this program really has become a one-stop shopping for teachers when it comes to teaching mathematics. So putting together all of the resources to accommodate the many levels of kids in the classroom and all of those other pieces is exhausting. And because they don't have to do that nearly as much with this program, they can really focus on looking at the data, having targeted instruction for students, and those pieces. So I think that teachers are finding this more motivating and inspirational and fun to teach in the classroom, and we know that that absolutely comes through to students.
oh yeah, if at this, it's K to 6, if my teacher loves math, I love math, right? That is
So,
gonna come through.
you mentioned, I mean, obviously this is Swan, but you mentioned the other Franklin Highgate are doing this as well. Do we know, are we all on the same page? Are we at different implementation
No.
levels?
So, to be really honest, we're all fully implementing this year. In Highgate, they also had select grades that we're implementing. In Franklin, I think almost every classroom is implementing but one, and even that teacher implemented part of it. So all 3 elementary schools fully implementing this program.
Okay.
So how's that gonna tie into the middle school program?
So the middle school is using a different publisher, same writer. So they're using Open Up. I can't speak to that a ton. I believe they're fully implemented. I think that last year
They
had that.
implemented it, they thought about piloting last year, and they said, well, we're struggling with our math results, let's just do it. And they did it with fidelity and lots of support. And there were times where people were saying, oh gee, maybe we should go back and reteach us. And they said, no, trust it and move forward. And they've had some good results with it. And so again, year 2, people are even more comfortable moving forward.
The high school too.
Yeah.
Good future agenda item. with Jim
Absolutely.
Sorga and Chrissy Meyer. I'm just talking to Judith.
Yeah.
We always do future.
Yeah. This is important. So our teaching in mathematics used to start with I do, meaning the teacher does it, and then we'll do it together, and then the kids will do it. And that's not this program. That is the biggest shift and the best shift that I've seen. So before, the teacher would model how to do it, and then kids would kind of practice together. Maybe one would come to the board, and then they'd go off and work. But if you switch to the next slide, it's flipped. So now we're giving kids a chance to show us what they can do before we give them anything. And that's the biggest and best shift, because we're putting kids in the driver's seat of their learning. And that's super important. So while kids have a minute or two, we're starting there, and then getting them to 3 or 4 minutes to getting on their own. We're building some independence. But what we're also able to do is to walk around and look at some of the models and some of the thinking that they come up with before we even give them anything. Of course, we're going to have kids that struggle a bit and don't know, but that is teaching them some perseverance too. When we walk around, it's not an opportunity to ask questions. It is an opportunity for a teacher to be walking around and looking at your thinking. And it's okay to think. It's okay to be a thoughtful person before you jump into the work. And so that's respectfully done. But it really is teaching kids some independence and isn't spoon feeding them what we want from them. But basically, so we're asking them, each kid, to do the work, and then we give them a chance to partner or share their thinking. So if I were partnered with Justina, I have some of my ideas written down, and she's got some ideas written down too, and we'll look at some of those ideas together. And what that does is it builds some confidence before we share out to everybody. And so I might have had a mistake on my own, but I might check in with Justina and clarify some of that. I'm like, oh, I didn't think to do it that way. And then When it's facilitated by the teacher in the end, kids feel a lot more comfortable to raise their hand because they've already had a chance to think it out on their own and with their partner. And that's where that final learning comes from, is in that final I do, where that synthesis, the lesson synthesis comes to play.
I've seen it, it's beautiful.
And
So
kids like
is
it.
Are you thinking that, because obviously they're gonna make mistakes, so you're thinking they're learning it better by making mistakes, and then they're thinking about, okay, or if you show them a different path, that they've got more skin in the game, or they've got more, they're
More
thinking,
hungry for it.
right, they're thinking more about it, and it's more likely to stick.
And I feel like it's more fair to those learners who already are bringing a lot to the table. And Dawn mentioned those students who have a lot of math knowledge, right? It gives them a chance to be creative and thoughtful about what models they're bringing to the table and trying those out. And we have to build learning communities. Like that's so important, because I've got to be brave enough to jot that down. So that comes first. But once we've built that, kids aren't afraid to jot that down on paper. So it's really wonderfully done. If you go to the next slide, it'll kind of go through the structure of a math class. So there always is a digital warm-up. I'll show you some of those examples. There's always an activity, and it goes through this cycle. It is an absolute you do. So the student does, they match up and pair up, and those are often done intentionally by the teacher ahead of time, based on a cool down the day before. And then it's wrapped up with the teacher doing a lesson synthesis. And then there's usually another activity that takes them through something a little bit deeper, and it's the same process. Sometimes there are 3 activities. Those would be a little bit shorter ones. And then there's always a cool down in the end. You might have heard those as exit tickets before. In this particular program, they're called cool downs. And the teacher's able to get some of that formative assessment there.
And I would say the students really like cool down versus exit ticket. Exit ticket feels like you can't leave, and I hear that a lot from kids, that cool downs are way cooler than exit tickets, and they're really the same thing with a different name, so it's cute.
Yeah. So this is an example of a warm-up. So it's really beautiful visuals, as you can see. We're asking kindergartners, which one doesn't belong? And this is where we hook kids, because there's no right or wrong answer. And so if I'm a teacher, right, and I see a hand pop up that I don't normally see pop up, I'm gonna get that kid involved, right? And then I'm gonna get to those kids who have some ideas that maybe I wouldn't have even thought of, having a voice here too. If you go to the next one, I'll show you. I don't want to spend too long on this. This is one from grade 1. It's a choral count. So basically they start at 10. And they'll say 10, 11, they say all of these numbers, and then in the end, we ask them, what patterns do you see? The things they come up with is absolutely incredible, right? It's place value. It's getting them to look and think about place value. This one. So this would actually be one slide at a time. So first they'd see 17 subtract 7, and then they'd see 17 minus 8. And try to relate that to the last one in their stack, just like that. And then they're gonna see 26 minus 6. And then they're gonna try to think about, oh, if I know 26 minus 6 is 20, then what's 26 minus 8? That's 2 more, right? We want them making those connections. How many do you see? This is an array getting them right into multiplication, so beginning of multiplication. We want them to see rows and columns here. Fractions. Fractions on a number line. What do you notice? A huge place value concept in 5th grade. That whole idea of 10. And this is 6th grade. So looking for patterns. Rate is a huge, huge high leverage concept in 6th grade. I put this down in there. I just wanted to show you to see a little bit of what we were thinking about with models. So number bonds is something we used to use. This shows more of that magnitude. So if Jada read 17 pages, Noah read 9 more than Jada, how many pages did Noah read? So being able to understand those story problems and think about magnitude. So this is a tape diagram. That this some of these spaces are larger than the other for a reason. Is it another tape diagram? You can see that all the 2s are worth the same amount. Magnitude. This is 6th grade. So the tape diagram, so you're seeing it throughout the grade levels. It doesn't just expire when you reach 3rd grade. And wanted to make sure you kind of knew what was like longer term, some of the longer term plans. Additional professional development is something that's really important to our district. So, and we are pretty picky about professional development. So are teachers. And so we really want to make sure to check in with teachers often and think about what is it that they want to know more about. What is it that they might be feeling like they could use a bit more with. And then really make sure that that PD gets tailored to what we need. And Illustrative is really good about that. Anytime we have PD, they chat with us ahead of time. What do your teachers need? What are they thinking? What's the vibe? All of that kind of stuff. Instructional rounds, so getting teachers in other teachers' classrooms to watch them teach and learn from each other is a really important thing. Those are coming up in January. Working as vertical teams. So we want to make sure that we have our kindergarten through 6th graders here at this school, 6th grade teachers, working together so that they can talk with each other. Like when I get to fractions in 4th grade, I'm noticing kids struggle with the number line. When you teach the number line, what is it that you do exactly? So that we can be thinking about how those concepts connect from one grade level to the next. And then always using student data to drive some of the bigger things we do, some of our universal moves, and some of our targeted moves too. Those are some big ones. I'm excited, and I love this program. And I loved Engage New York too. This one has a lot more to offer.
It says that's it.
It is.
So I have a question. So this looks phenomenal, but is this the only way now that math is taught through these programs?
Through programs?
Through like the illustrative mathematics, is that that's the primary source that math is being taught?
No, so there are other programs, and maybe not understanding your question completely.
In the district, you mean, Reg?
No, so this is specifically to Swanton, but it's being done in some of the other schools.
No, all of our schools are using these authors.
Okay.
And K6 is using these same materials, they're evidence-based materials. That was important to us, so that teachers aren't going around looking. Before, they had a framework of standards and units of study, but they didn't have materials that everybody had available. So we purchased these instructional materials, call it a program, but it's not a textbook. It's a collection of materials that are aligned to the standards. Every school is using them. And the middle high school is using a different publisher, but the same scope and sequence and the same authors.
Got it. And so, just so I kind of understand completely, it's a push to more illustrations to help with some of the concepts of math, and that's where a lot of these things are going, right?
Yeah, I would say Engage New York did too, but this is the way that this program presents ideas to kids. It puts them more at the driver's seat in their learning, and it puts a little bit more on them in a respectful way, so they're doing the math versus just being told about the math. Yeah.
Any other questions or comments?
So this question is not directly related, but you mentioned the teachers pay teachers, and huge resource, but as you mentioned, there's a lot there. Are there any other areas like literacy where we can support finding another program that's similar that will help teachers not have to go?
We're doing that now. We're doing the research now.
Awesome.
Yeah. So we're using our ArtBesser funds as the seed money to purchase the materials. And once again, they're doing a very similar process. We're gonna talk about it at our next Student Success Committee meeting.
just want to say one more thing about the program. Because it's digital, we have the books too, but because it's digital, every year they update and they take teacher feedback. Any lesson, I can add feedback about that particular lesson. And every summer they'll revise and we get the new revision every year. So you have to buy the new edition books. It's just so teacher friendly.
What's the feedback then from classroom teachers? Are they as excited about it as you are?
Good question. So I would say many of them are as excited as I am. If I'm really honest with you, our kindergarten and first grade veteran teachers are the most nervous. And they were the most nervous when I even mentioned the idea of shifting a program. One of the things that we've just, that we've been working on a little bit at the beginning of this year is numeral writing in kindergarten. It was explicitly taught in the last program. It's not explicitly taught in this one. And so we have to be really mindful about supplementing that differently. And so we're using our math menu time. So they took 2 weeks out of math menu to intentionally teach numeral writing, and we have a send home game to go at conferences. It's not taking away anything from the math block, but it's using that additional half hour to do something intentional that we know that this program doesn't. Another one in first grade was combinations to 10. So we felt like this program is teaching a little bit later than we're used to and causing a bit more anxiety for some of those veteran teachers, and so we're just hammering it in menu. Kids are playing games with combinations to 10. We sent a game home at open house that had to do with combinations to 10. We're just being super mindful about some of those things that we might be a little bit nervous about, and being just super cautious about that because K-3 is just newer to us program-wise, just in case. But it will take us a year to really figure out what it's like, but we're already kind of in PLCs talking about those things and taking actions. So maybe they're not as excited as I am.
Is math menu, is that when something like Prodigy would be used? Because I know my kids talk about Prodigy all the time.
Yeah, so Prodigy is just, it's the tech portion where we can give kids a chance and they want to be on their computers and in an intentional way so that they're practicing a target. And so for Prodigy, a teacher can go in and assign a target and kids can go on and play, they battle their computer for different things.
And that's during the math
It's during math menu, it's not during math class. Yeah.
I think we're really fortunate. I just wanted to mention 2 quick shout outs for Jess that she did finish the master's program for VMI not too long ago. So that is an incredibly rigorous program that has really a twofold approach. There's a tremendous amount of math content, which is really important in the sense that anytime I think that you're bringing in a new program or material, you have to know what's important before you bring that in so you know where the holes are and where they're not. And so we're really fortunate to have someone with Jess's level of expertise. We also had some professional development with one of our folks very recently, and in order to make that happen, because we are trying to staff getting all of our new teachers into that professional development. Jess was filling in a classroom and subbing during that period of time, which I just think lends a tremendous amount of what I might call street cred, for a coach who is going to step into a classroom and fill in for a teacher and kind of put themselves in their shoes. So we're really just so fortunate to have Jess leading this work.
I love it.
I just have one last question.
Yeah.
So it started 2020, so we're at full implementation now. When do you think we'll be able to tell what kind of difference it's making with student outcomes and math scores and testing?
Yeah. So we have a couple of different gauges. So our FAT fluency we do 3 times a year. We're keeping a close eye on how that data this year compares to last year. It's a little too early to tell now, but we want to look at STAR 360 scores, we want to look at VCAP scores, we want to make sure that we're really on top of, and we're looking at that. It depends on who you ask, but I would say that I've seen from a lot that 3 to 4 years is generally what it takes for you to really see some outcomes or some changes. It's too long for me, right? I want to see things a little sooner. And I get to go into classrooms and so I get to see it firsthand. But I think in the data on a larger scale, it takes a little while.
I'm not sure everybody gets a chance to talk for you. First, I want to commend you for differentiating between writer and publisher. As a former curriculum director, I don't care who publishes it, but I do want to know who writes it. I thought that was very astute because I've been in a number of presentations over the years, and many people do not pick up on that. They may realize it, but it's the writers, and it looks like these writers engage with it, which I think is tremendous.
Yeah.
That was great. You're talking maybe about some of the senior teachers, and you're going to comment, why are they doing that? I've done that before. They're kind of like taking away my good lessons. Is that some of the anxiety?
No, they had a thoughtful way about how they used to do it. And I would say with Engage New York, we rearranged and arranged and rearranged units so much. And they had like this particular activity that they always did at this time. And I think that they felt a little relieved knowing that we don't have to get rid of any of those good activities. We're just gonna have that in addition to this program too. And I think that feels better. I know some of those more veteran teachers were worried about map and menu and like, do I have to use all of the centers that this program is sending it? I've got really great games that work for kids. And so we're just being really mindful that the message is, we're still gonna do all the really great things that we know are good for kids. This is here to help us and to help us be more mindful about the vertical alignment that we have. So we can't just be going rogue and like, oh, I know this is and this and this is good. These things that I have that are really great for kids, how can I embed them into what we're doing here?
Okay, the last question, this may be for Julie or Kasha, but how do you find out, or have you found out, how this aligns with the state assessment? You know, I've been around so long that, you know, the last hot one was SBAG, New Balance, now we've got another one. Is it possible that the state assessment can keep up with the changes in curricula in schools?
Well, I think the answer to that is we have Common Core standards, right? So the state assessment and all of these materials are aligned to Common Core standards. So the standards are the ones that we are mapping everything to. So that alignment should be there. Yeah.
Should be.
And but there's always, you always have to look at what your school has chosen for your priority standards, and you make sure that the materials you're using are aligning to that. And the PLCs, looking at student work and data, you know, that's where the nitty-gritty of that work
So I
happens.
guess my question is, that was acknowledged and discussed and considered as you made your decision?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much, Jess, for
Yes,
presenting that
thanks
to
so
us.
much.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
we greatly appreciate it. All right, and next on the agenda is the after-school update. Thanks.
Hey everybody, is this an okay spot? Kind of? While Julie gets the presentation up, I'm going to ask everybody to grab a pen and paper or a pencil. Try to avoid screens if you can. It's gonna be real quick, but you can take the teacher out of the classroom, but you can't really do it. So I'm just gonna start us off, Julie, you can go right to the agenda. I brought paper for those of you that are ill prepared.
You
You weren't late, though.
apologize. It's 7:15 on a Tuesday. I am sorry. I'll keep this task to a minimum. So as you are taking a look at this agenda, Julie, I have a boatload of content here, and I want to try to cruise through it for the sake of time. I know that I've got theoretically about half an hour, but if we can, Julie, if you don't mind skipping for a moment, so get a piece of paper, and I would like you to write down the first 3 words that come to mind when you hear the phrase. Next slide, please. After school programs, the first 3 words that come to mind. Just doesn't matter, you're not gonna share this out, this is just for you. So you can write whatever you're feeling. I'll give you a couple moments to do that. And once you've got those 3 words down, can we go to the next slide, please? Now, write down the first 3 words that come to mind when you hear Missisquoi Valley School District. Again, no one's gonna read it. I'm not gonna make anybody do a dramatic reading or anything, so you're fine.
For the after-school program?
Nope, just what comes to mind when you hear MVSD. Just 3 words. And now that I've got your brains warmed up a little bit, we'll clearly return to this at the end, but we can head on right to the next slide. About us. I'm Beth Ann. I am the Director of After School and Summer Programs, and I've decided to take tonight to really share about who our team is, where I come from, because I think sometimes that context is helpful, and where we're going from here. So, I won't read every slide to you because you'll see it's quite text heavy. I got really excited about this. But one of our taglines essentially is expanding opportunities and enhancing belonging. And I think that's something that is really important for us to recognize, that what we do is here to really work with what y'all are doing during the school day. So what kind of curriculum are we implementing? What are our goals? What are our visions as a district? After school can absolutely expand those opportunities and enhance students' sense of belonging in this community. Next slide, please. I am just gonna cruise on through. So Franklin Central, we have Elsa Rude, who is our site coordinator there. She has been with us for over 10 years, so much longer than I've been here. She knows everything. She's incredible. And Franklin Central currently serves 4th through 6th grade through our after-school programs. And in fall 2023, we've got 21 students enrolled over there, which, as you all know, it's pretty small school. So that's about 47% of our 4th through 6th graders are engaged in our after-school programs over there. We have a breadth of opportunities, a breadth of programs going on. They are posted on our website, and we've got really just a great variety going on, but I'm gonna highlight one from each school. So right now in the fall, wood burning is one of the more popular classes. Students are building structures, designing their own artwork and burning it into the wood, creating something that they will then do for a showcase at the end of the session. So we're really excited to share what they've been working on. Next, please. At Highgate, we have 1st through 6th grade. Ellen Lemos is our site coordinator. She's been with us as long as I have. We both started in July 2020. And she has really taken the program to a new space, works very well with Yeshua. It's really nice to see. Fall 2023, we currently have 55 students enrolled, which is about 30% of our 1st through 6th grade population. And we were really fortunate. We were afraid that we'd have to have an enrollment cap in Highgate, but Ellen was able to work her magic, and every family was able to get the days they wanted and the programs they wanted. One of the programs over here is Literacy Time with Miss Ada from Highgate Library. And this really highlights to me our strong community partnerships. We have got a ton of them, and it's really exciting to see. Ada volunteers her time. She'll bring 2 or 3 books, read them with our younger students, have a discussion, and then a hands-on activity after that. And the kids, I know, get really excited to see it's the woman from the library who's here with us today, and it's a really special opportunity for them to connect with an adult in the community. And now we've got Swanton. We have Molly Hartman-Longtime, who's been with us for about a year. She just returned from maternity leave. It was really exciting to meet her little baby. We had a great interim site coordinator, Becky McGregor, in the meantime. And with Molly's careful planning and Becky's leadership, paired with a lot of support from my end, we'll just say it, but really created a fantastic program to start this fall. And now that Molly's back, I think Chris and Justina can say that we're really heading in the right direction again. We do have an enrollment cap in Swanton because 155 students is a lot. So we did have to limit it to essentially 2 days a week. Each student gets 2 days a week. We're hoping to accommodate more as time goes on, but right now that is the reality of the structure of the program. And we really need to make sure that our kids stay safe and that we are running a sustainable program. And that's about 32% of our 1st through 6th graders.
So when you say an enrollment cap, does that mean that you limited days that you could offer it, or how many students?
How many students we can allow per day. So it's a huge process to go through 155 requests and determine which days each student can attend. And so right now we have a cap of 55 students a day. And then of the 155 students that have enrolled, we get 2 each day essentially, unless some only selected one day. That is the case sometimes.
What's the limiting resource? Is it space? Is it staffing? Is it something
Primarily
else?
staffing, so staffing and budget. So we're getting in a better place with staff, which is nice. However, it is still difficult to retain quality staff members. And with the initiatives we have to give them at least a competitive pay rates, we'll get into that in a minute, that we have to stay within a pretty tight structure there in Swanton. Our 2 program highlights here are Rosie's Girls and Vermont Works for Women, and Taekwondo with Adam Shedrick from Shedrick Martial Arts, again highlighting some really, really cool community partnerships we have going on. I realized I did that answer your question? I apologize.
Yeah, I'm just looking forward to our budget that we'll be putting together here in the next few months, and if we've got students who need this program who don't have access, then I think that'd be something for us to talk about during that process.
I appreciate that, and don't you worry, we've got some slides about that. So MVU Middle High School, we have Becca Tucker here, who is our new site coordinator at MVU. I did not force her to come. She just chose to be here tonight, so thank you, Becca. She's only been with us for 6 months, but the progress that you've made at MVU is truly remarkable to me. We currently have 40 students enrolled, and we have 16 team leaders that are hired or volunteering with us. And this is a rolling process in which we have students that are reaching out pretty consistently at this point to work with us. And our programs are just getting bigger and better as we gain traction and momentum. As you all know, we had a pretty tumultuous leadership year last year in which I was running MVU for a while, and then we had a couple people that didn't last. So I think there is a little hesitancy from some of our students about, is there going to be consistency with this leader? And I think Becca's really going to show that way. Did you want to say anything? I know that I said I wouldn't make you talk.
So much for that.
I know. Well, you may be available for questions after as we continue to power through this. But thank you so much for being here with us. One of our program highlights is at-home cooking with Sierra Tibbetts, which Becca could speak more about. But Sierra, one of the very cool things about Sierra is that she's actually the assistant manager at Vermont State Parks. And we feel really fortunate that we were able to scoop her up, and she works for both Swanton Elementary and MVU and has been doing incredible stuff with the cooking class. All right. So some quick facts for you for fall 2023. We currently have 280 students enrolled. We haven't had to turn away a student, so that is also kind of speaking to the enrollment cap. We are very intentional about making sure there is absolutely a space for everyone. Currently there are 58 program options across the district, and we have 40 days of programming between September and November. So we can go through this real fast because I hate talking about myself, but I do sometimes recognize that it's important to understand where your leaders are coming from. Prior to this, I was in higher education for many, many years. My degrees are in writing. I have been a media correspondent, a managing editor, a guest fiction editor, all kinds of things. But my most recent recent professional background is in higher ed. And I think this really transcends to my passion for after school in the sense that we have so many opportunities to create lifelong learners and to have them engage and get excited about the things they want to pursue in their future. I don't think higher ed is the only option. I think we have plenty of options for our students, and it's really a passion of mine to highlight those pathways. As you can see, I've got many years of working in nonprofits, working with kids, so I wanted to throw that out there for you all to know a little bit about me. And we can, I've been here since July 2020. these are some of the things that we've been working on recently, some of my particular initiatives. At the community level, I'm on the continuous improvement plan team with COSHA. It's been really great being able to provide the data that we gather in after school to recognize how it's contributing to the district's initiatives. I'm part of our central office leadership, MVSD leadership. Julie and I work very closely on Portrait of a Graduate together, and I run our MVSD after school advisory board. At the state and national level, it's really exciting. I just recently joined the Vermont After School Advisory Board, which is, I want to say, a dozen folks from around the state that represent different capacities in the after school realm, or before school, really any out of school time realm. So we do have some licensed childcare representatives, we have a couple pre-K folks, a few other 21C directors, and it's been a really incredible conversation to be a part of. I helped revise some of our standards that you'll see in a minute. Anything else that I need to really focus on here? I'm currently managing several grants. So when people ask what I do, I typically say, mostly just sit behind a desk managing grants. But as we know, that's not really true. I visit as often as I can, managing lots of teams, working with our kids to make sure everybody is happy and healthy. And we've got a ton of active partnerships and agreements that I work very hard to customize to make sure that we're meeting both our community's needs and the needs of our vendors, essentially. All right.
I just do want to point out this list, and this is in your drive as a board, but we were just talking about community partnerships. Beth Ann really is very intentional in how many community partners she reaches out to and interfaces with.
Thank you, Julie. And it's really, oh, sorry.
No, I was gonna, that was a partnership too with the Habitat for Aviation, right?
Yes.
Kind of partnership.
Yep. Well, not an official partnership, but we have a collaboration with them in which we run a summer program with them. But yes, they're fantastic.
And so how many grants are under after school?
Ooh, we'd have to count from that list 5 or 6 or 7.
You want me to go back?
Well, sure.
Is that the list?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then if you count.
And then all the food.
It's all the food. It's so fun. The food is our favorite part, isn't it?
But it's great that we feed all those kids.
It's so amazing, and it's really, that's whenever we do our training for that stuff, I always say, but we're feeding kids. This is, it's a good thing.
So that's like built into the after school list that meals are always provided?
Currently, yes. And that's probably, I don't think that will go away. Our eligibility has really, it's solid now, which is nice. All right. So coming up this fall, you can just take a quick look. I'll be attending a couple conferences. My team is coming to the Vermont After School Annual Conference, which is super exciting. We've got a couple culminating end of session events, and we are inviting Vermont After School's Matt Wolf, who is a total rock star. He did some staff training with us this summer, and he's returning to us probably, it's like late November, early December. We haven't nailed down a date quite yet. And we're hoping that the MVU cooking class will essentially offer a dinner in which Matt works with our staff, our teen staff, and then we open it up to a little bit of a community event. All right. So you can cruise on along. Now we're going to talk a little bit about what it looks like at the national and statewide level. If anybody's a giant nerd like me, you're welcome to check out these peer-reviewed articles. There's a lot of interesting research on after school and the impact it has on students, both as citizens in their own community and as active students in their space. I won't read these all to you, you can just skip through them, Julie, again, for the sake of time. But I highly recommend checking out some of those articles moving forward. It's really exciting. Act 76 was a big deal in our out of school time community. We call ourselves the OST community. It was a really exciting thing, and although much of the focus is on licensed child care services, there is, their very first legislative intent is to increase access to and the quality of child care services and after school and summer care programs throughout the state. Vermont is really a leader in our nation right now as far as the investment that the state is showing in the power of our after school programming and our third space initiatives. So it's incredibly exciting stuff that, again, the links are here. You're welcome to dig into it on your own time when you have all of that free time. This is one of the documents I was fortunate enough to help revise, and this is now implemented at the state level. It's about a 30-page PDF that talks about Vermont's guidelines for after-school, summer, and youth development programs. Again, this is really a pretty exciting thing at the national level. A lot of states are starting to adopt some of these ideas and figure out how they can kind of create what we're doing. A lot of great focuses here, and as you'll see with the Vermont guidelines as well as our 21C guidelines that we'll focus on in a minute, it's all directly related to what we do in the district. It is so closely tied into so much of the stuff that we're really, really aiming for in our goals, in our, in all of our initiatives. So it's exciting to see. All right. Okay, I'm doing this fast. This is great.
Okay, take a breath.
Are we good on time? Okay.
You don't have executive session.
All right. Well, and again, it's quite a bit of content that if there are any follow-up questions, I'm happy to take the time to answer those questions, and we can skip through our quotes that are all really just saying after school helps offset some of the negative impacts that our students may face after school. If they don't have a safe space to be in after school, we can create that space for them. And we are often the last people in the school building they'll see that day. So if we can leave them with a positive image, it increases attendance rate, it increases that sense of belonging and that desire to come back. So direct linkage to our student outcomes and district goals. Obviously, we worked closely with Portrait of a Graduate, and these are really core to the foundation of what we do with our programming and what we do in our staff training. We, again, are woven into our continuous improvement plan, and we do have quite a bit of data to back up what we're doing here. Go on to the next slide. Now, this is the kind of boring stuff, but kind of exciting stuff. This is the primary grant that funds a good portion of our programming. And it's really what I spend much of my time doing, managing this grant. And this is the evaluation plan that I sat on the advisory board to refine the language. Essentially, it's distributed at the federal level, and then each state finds ways to essentially track their data, track their progress. So I was able to help, I worked with the Manuel Betts of the AOE to redefine this language and decide how Vermont is going to implement what the 21st Century Learning Grant means. And as you can see, it's tied right into school day initiatives. Now, what I'm going to be doing here, there are 5 goals for 21C, and I want to show a little bit of how we are demonstrating success within those goals and where we kind of hope to go from here. So goal number 1 is 21C funded programs ensure access and equity for all children, youth, and their families. So we are currently attempting to offer 150 program days a year at each of our schools, and we have 10 to 25 class options a week per school. Franklin, of course, is always the exception, just simply with our smaller student body, but in general, this is the framework here. And goal 2, all 21C funded programs are of high quality. And that's something to me that I think is very vague, but obviously we've got some of our clarifying results here. And one of the things that I think is incredibly important for us to all remember is that we are using data for continuous improvement. We are, although we often feel siloed, we are very much doing what the district is doing. So this is actually some real data from our reporting last year, and we took 2021 versus 21-22 state assessment data, MVU grades, attendance rates, behavior expectations, all kinds of things. Chris knows because I had to reach out to him for all of that really fun stuff. It's quite tedious. We'll be reporting on these outcomes again in January. So this is data from last year comparative to the year prior. But as you can see here, we've got some really cool results emerging. This is exclusively based upon students that attend after-school programming for, I want to say it's more than 20 hours total. So they're called our regular attendees. So this is based off of the data we pull from our schools based upon our students that have attended after school and are considered regular attendees. So 62% of students in Highgate have demonstrated improved attendance rates. And we do know data is skewed from COVID. We totally get that. So it's really difficult to say, yes, like after school really helped with this. But I think it's important for us to start tracing this and start tracking it and sharing it out with the community. 80% of after-school students at MVU demonstrated improved attendance rates. And again, this is exclusively with students that attended after school as regular attendees. 76% of students at Swanton had growth in reading and language arts on state assessments. 68% of enrolled after-school students at Franklin demonstrated improvement in teacher-reported engagement. We do have all of our teachers at the end of the school year report. We give them a roster of students that are our regular attendees in after school in their class. And they do a brief survey essentially saying, you know, from the start of the school year to the end of the school year, have you seen an increase in engagement, a decline in engagement, or have they remained steady in that engagement level? Goal 3, all 21C funded programs are led by effective leaders. Yet again, a little bit vague, but as you can see here, they get into the specifics. High quality staff to run programs, we have appropriate staff retention rates, and this for sure is the goal that we need to work on the most. And so as of right now, we have 60 people that work with us, which is incredible. And we are implementing and rolling out new training series. We have all district professional development in which we get all of our out-of-school professionals together at once, which really has been creating, I think, a pretty cool sense of community. And again, you're welcome to butt in anytime. So we're really trying to focus on how do we retain this staff. And we understand that if it's difficult to retain staff across the state, it's especially challenging in the corner of Vermont. But we are doing our best, and we survey our staff at the end of every session to see what we can do better, what they're looking at from us, and I am always open to suggestions there. And we also did bump up their pay to try to remain remotely competitive. Goal 4, all 21C funded programs develop youth leadership, agency, and voice. And this is the place we really shine, and this is what we often see when we get our site visits from our grants. We are doing some really incredible work with our young folks in the community. One of the interesting projects we have is through the Vermont Youth Project, we basically have a participatory budget process with our teens, and they get to write their own grants and essentially receive that funding if they write a good grant. And we are there with them every step of the way to help them do it. But it's often similar to the math presentation about letting the students lead. We really like to see what they have to contribute, what they want to do. There's a framework for them to work within, and then we're there to support them. So they've received $10,000 in the past 2 years and have implemented some really interesting community projects. So this is one of our awesome MVU students with Becca just the other day. Her initiative for this grant was to create pet care kits for families in need, for families that didn't have access to, isn't it, this was completely, I know, it's completely her idea. We can't take any credit for it. It was amazing. And so we now have these baskets upon baskets that were did you just drop them off at the Abnett?
They're dropping them off this week.
That's so great. So we've got all kinds of really exciting things that is completely youth-led, and we just get really, really psyched about it. And this past year alone, we've had about 30 MVU students that have either worked with us or volunteered with us. And we have a very intentional process in which we have a dedicated staff member that works with them to make sure that it's not just a job. We are helping them refine a resume. We're helping them come up with references. We're helping them develop those skills, whether it's for a college application or entering the workforce or whatever it may be. So I get very excited about this. And then our last goal that we structure all of our framework around, and don't worry, there will be a larger high budget image in a minute. 21C funded programs are sustainable. This is something that is really shifting into next steps. What do we do next? We were able to function within the budget that was written 5 years ago, and it was tight. The 21C grant award requires 50% or more match for a seasoned project like ours. So we will be concluding our 15th year of 21C programming in the district, which is incredible. So we are definitely a seasoned program. It's a grant that goes in 5-year cycles. So we would be entering our 4th grant cycle as we are writing this grant. And as a seasoned program, we really need to show that we have got the community interest, we have got the buy-in, and we have got the support to make this a sustainable program, which I believe we do. So what is next for after school? MVSD. We can skip my nerdy comment, but it's good, I promise. The current budget. So this is what it looks like in a nutshell. As you can see, we have about 44% is our 21st Century Learning Grant, which looks great on our reporting. And then we do have lots of other matches here. We do, of course, understand that ARP ESSER is temporary and that it is going away. With the incredible support of our business office, they really helped shift what our funding looks like. So typically our tutoring support would come from CFP. However, we were utilizing ARP ESSER in this particular way to support our tutoring. And so those are some of the conversations we've already started having. Laura, Julie, and Marnie and I have started talking about what does it look like for our match to the 21C grant? What else are we gonna do to show that our community has buy-in in this and that we can do it? Of course, we have some other grant funding, and then we've got our meal reimbursement programs, and yeah, lots of good stuff here.
So local funding.
Yep, so that's what's written into, that's what we vote on, the school budget. Yep.
That's the general line.
Yes, yes. And we do have a decent match right now, but it's definitely something we gotta work on.
Julie, can you just go back for a second?
Absolutely.
So, this is 20 through 24, so this is the next budget coming up, so not gonna have that ARP ESSER, right?
Correct.
We will have one more summer.
One more summer.
Summer ARP ESSER for summer 24, but yeah, that's it.
Yeah. So yes, and it's tricky because we are now applying, we're beginning the application process for the next 5 years of 21C funding. So we're beginning the work of what we want to see programmatically, what we're going to ask the state for, and what our local match is local budget dollars, but it also includes Medicaid and consolidated federal grants as well, and the meals program. So those other things count as a local match as well. It's not just general line item. It's part of a package.
That reapplication for the grant is the opportunity to increase that blue section of the pie
Yes.
to meet our program. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, if we can pull it off, yeah. And it's certainly not guaranteed, and as a seasoned program, we really gotta shine. And I think with the support of our folks in central office and creating a really great team, working with my advisory board, it's gonna be a lot of work, but I think that we can pull it off. And again, Julie, if you wanna continue forward.
Well, just before you go on, sorry to ask the same questions, but so does that mean, to Devin's point, that increasing the grant means increasing that share?
Yes, it means that we will need to find a way to prove that we can find at least 50% match with other sources. So local funding, of course, would be great. We have our meals pretty much locked in and looking into other grant opportunities, all that kind of stuff. So that's something that we haven't projected quite yet, but I'm absolutely happy to share that when we figure out, again, what we're looking at as we're writing this request for the grant, because I'll be having conversations, get ready, with each school principal to determine what the structure looks like and what we actually need. What do our programs need?
So, sorry.
Yeah.
What's that total, Devin?
Yeah, finance committee's asking a lot of questions.
860,000.
I'm sorry. 800.
860,000-ish.
Okay.
I took out, we had some overlap with additional ESSER funding that I ended up taking out because I had incorrectly projected it from the year prior. Yep.
Okay.
So it's roughly a $900,000 budget right now that we are functioning under.
And is there, for the next year's grant program, do we need to build into the budget our local match for that next grant?
Yes.
For this cycle for our budget?
Yes.
And when is your grant application due?
February 2nd.
So it's
So we need to have it in
It's,
before.
it's right, it follows the grant. The grant process follows the school budget timeline a bit.
We just won't have an answer on it.
Right,
We won't have an
right,
answer.
right. It's gonna be a real hopeful, yeah.
I don't see them saying no, but Beth Ann will share some things that they consider, and a lot of pressure to grow their match. They want to see us expand,
Yes.
and we have to make sure that we actually have the capacity to do that. If we really don't, in terms of staffing, then we have to make some decisions. So that's the conversations we're engaging in.
So currently, $875,000 program for this next 5-year cycle. Are we going to be requesting, say, 1.1 million so that we can grow? Is that, like, we are going to be requesting more and therefore we need more on the match side?
I love your question, and I mean, ideally, yes. However, we're not quite there in that decision-making process yet, because again, it's a conversation with each school and with the community and with you all to say, do we stay as we are? Do we reduce? Do we grow? What is the value of after school? And there will be a slide on that in just a minute, but no, I appreciate that question. And so it's not something that I obviously can decide alone. It's very much a community effort here to determine what's best for us, what's best for our schools. So real quick right here, as you can see, 2019 to 2024 this is the grant cycle we are currently in. And so it's been interesting with all of the changes that we've experienced in 5 years. So a myriad of changes here. We're on the heels of our MVSD merger in the midst of this funding. The after-school director of 14 years retired in 2020. She had an incredible legacy that she left with us, but losing that seasoned director, then here's a pandemic. So we have had quite a bit of turmoil within this particular grant cycle, and I want to share a little bit about what we have accomplished in those 5 years. And it's kind of wild to look back and see that. So I've been here for about 3.5 of these, almost 5. So I guess most of the time. So created a successful hybrid remote model and a summer passport, which is a collaboration with all of our rec centers and public libraries. It was a really incredible community effort to bring all of us together in the district, and I thought it was an incredibly successful project. We returned to or surpassed our 2019 enrollment numbers, which was a lot faster than we expected, actually, especially with our staffing challenges. And again, enrollment numbers are, of course, different than attendance numbers. We hosted 3 years of full-day summer programming versus our historical half-day programming, and this, of course, was thanks to ESSER funding. We modified the budget and structure to add 2 full-time site coordinators, which is it's kind of the new trend in the state right now to say our coordinators work incredibly hard. They are working more than 40 hours a week. They need to be compensated and recognized as full-time employees. So thank you to Julie's support in making this happen. It's incredible to be able to honor my staff that way. We modernized our registration system to online and paper platforms. We also redefined the handbook, which was 350 scanned-in pages. So it's now actually our template. It's actually a template for the state of Vermont now, our handbook model, which is really exciting. And the initiative there was to increase access for all of our families, especially in the midst of COVID. How do we make sure everybody can register right away? Increased hourly pay rates for our staff by at least $1 an hour, which still wasn't really what we wanted, but we're doing what we can with what we have. We added first grade to Swanton and Highgate, really based upon this demand from families and this ask of families saying, our first graders need support after school too. What can we do to support them? We also developed and implemented our growing teen leadership program, which I've already spoken about. All right, we're almost there, everybody. So these are the questions we're asking right now. So applying for the next 21C cycle, here are really the different frameworks we're working within, which is responding to many of these questions. So the first option here is we can maintain the current structure and budget, which ultimately would limit that growth because we can't keep up with inflation, essentially. So if we're writing in a 5-year grant, we need to make sure that we are increasing that budget line. So in essence, we can kind of plateau and eventually kind of peter out a little bit. Or we can increase the grant request and maintain or continue our growth. So of course we want to factor in cost of living increases, expand programming to include more students, hopefully aim for higher staff retention, and of course that's again, if we grow the grant, we grow our additional funding sources to match it. Or we can reduce the grant request, which is a very real possibility right now, and decline the growth and perhaps limit it to smaller than what it is now. Again, recognizing that things get more expensive as the years go on. So again, these are the conversations we'll be having at each school with each principal, and I'm happy to bring this to you all whenever you do have interest in learning where we're at. We are thinking about things, what was that?
I was gonna say, will you have some numbers to us when it comes to budget time?
Yeah. We've got, so Julie, Laura, and I are meeting monthly on this, and it's essentially my entire life right now. So you let me know when you need the numbers, and I'll get them to you. One of the things we are talking about that, again, I'll be bringing to each school is removing or reducing our transportation options, as transportation is, aside from staff salaries, our largest expense. And it's it increases access for our families, absolutely, and it provides access for the families that really need it. However, it's becoming a rather unsustainable model right now. So we're looking at different types of transportation options.
It's one of the things that Beth Ann gets feedback from the state. You know, why do you have to have transportation? It's a big expense. Other districts don't need it, you know.
Doesn't have it, Franklin Northeast doesn't have it.
Right. So
What do you mean
it's
they don't have transportation?
other after-school programs, you know, provide busing home.
So is there a survey that we could do with the families? If there was no transportation, what would enrollment look like?
Yeah, I'm curious to know what those other
what would
districts'
it-
enrollment is versus ours.
Yeah.
So I do have, I can get access to their enrollment numbers. I work pretty closely with my counterparts. And we do actually, in our registration form, every time our students sign up, we have a question that says, would this limit your ability to attend our programming, or is it just nice to have? Is it a luxury? So I don't have those numbers off the top of my head, but it's a little over 50% of our families say they would not be able to attend if not for transportation. Which, of course, it's a survey. You don't quite know what that really means.
If we, and this is totally, you can tell me to shut up. So if we took part of what we spend on transportation and we say we can't do transportation, but we can extend it to 5:30, knowing most families work until 5.
Yes.
Like, I work from home, I'm very lucky, but being able to get there before 5 o'clock to get my kid, like, that can be tight if I have a meeting. So is that, you know, what sort of impact could something like that have if we shifted
No,
the money went?
That's a fantastic question, and that is something that other programs are talking about and considering. So right now, we're sort of costing out what that would look like for staff time and how much of a financial gain that would be for us if we are investing in additional staff time, keeping buildings open longer, which is another question for our principals. All of those kinds of, that is absolutely, you're on the right track with the questions, because that's something we're looking into right now as well.
And I think at the same time, thinking about, is a 10-hour school day developmentally appropriate for a first grader, for example, is
Yep.
something else to consider.
Absolutely.
I mean, the point you just brought up though was, for a lot of parents, they can't get there at the end of the school day, they can't be home. And so, and I think it shows, especially like Swan, that's a lot of students, 155 students, and you all know.
I know a lot of families personally that use it for after-school childcare because they need only like 2 hours of childcare after school, but the way daycare works, like you have to pay for an entire week spot, so it's a hefty cost. So I know so many people rely on it just so they can finish out their work day before they have to go get the kids.
Which is part of too with budget season coming around. This is what I'd like to pose to our families and say again, these are some of our options. Where do we go from here? I think this is pretty much it for the conversations. Well, I obviously see a lot of value in after school, and as you can see here, these are just a couple of the examples. We are employing a lot of people. One of the things I also think is important to recognize that though it's part-time work, it often increases retention efforts, right? If that's just that little bit of extra income that somebody needs to stay in our district, that somebody needs to stay in our community, and it's right there, it's right after school, it's easy to do. Well, it's not easy to do, but it's easy to be there. You'd think it would be easy to be there. We have some issues with attendance from our staff sometimes, but overall, it's an incentive for folks to stay in our community, and it's a great way to keep them connected with our kids as well, in addition to 1,000 other things that I hope I expressed tonight. And again, these are the questions we're going to be having with everybody. I believe, yeah, where should our after-school programs go in the next 5 years? That's what we're not looking at tomorrow, we're not looking at just July, we're looking at the next 5 years. And I'd really like to hear all of your feedback at some point in the future as to what you see us accomplishing, because I see a pretty bright future. And because I know we're tight for time, so I'm not gonna make you do my really cool reflection exercise, but after that, after this presentation, looking at the words you wrote down, really just, I suppose, write down, I'm making this up on the fly because we're not doing my cool activity. 3 words now that you just feel about this evening. It doesn't even have to be related, but I just want you to write down 3 words. And then at some point later in the week, take a look at those 9 words you wrote down, see if you see any themes, recognize anything that may be conflicting or complementary. And I think the art of a closing reflection, really for anything, I highly recommend you all steal this for meetings or if you're running a class. It's a really cool way to let some of that insight sink in and allow you to think about it in your own terms as well. So I think that is all I've got for you. And thanks for listening to just my rapid fire presentation.
Thank you very much.
Everybody.
Thank you, Bethany. Thanks for coming, Becca. I know you have a long walk home, but
Yay! I know, that is fabulous.
I just have to say, I had an opportunity had to, because somebody had to, drive some kids over the summer program.
Yes, we
And
did.
it was so much fun. I had so much fun. But I had an opportunity while I was waiting for the kids to just see Becca with her team and how things were running and how organized the lunches were. And I just can't say enough about what you've brought to that program.
So are there creative ideas for fundraising occurring in other places in the state? I mean, I know you people meet, talk, I'm sure money is one of your topics.
Oh,
But are there people that are getting money from some sources that we may not know about or that underwritten by organized, not necessarily organizations, businesses?
Mm-hmm.
So one of the resounding pieces of feedback around that is that fundraising efforts often cost us more than they do, or we break even, simply for the staff time, the resources that go into it, especially when trying to align with district initiatives and whatnot. We obviously want to be intentional about those fundraising efforts, and some of our historical data, as well as my colleagues around the state, fundraising is often not a reliable source of income. Other funding sources, most of the other programs that do receive the grants that we're not already looking into and the support we're already looking into are licensed programs, which have opportunities for many other funding sources. We are not a licensed program, which is another question that we would bring to the table. Historically, again, it does not seem like it is an effective tool here in our after-school programs, but becoming a licensed program would open up additional sources of funding.
You'd be licensed as a child care program.
As a child care program, yes.
That's the license. That
Yes,
we're
sorry
talking
about that, yes.
For X number of minutes or hours per day.
I'm sure that comes with
Lots of strings.
yes,
Oh,
expensive
yeah.
requirements to go along with
Yes. Yes. So that is, again, one of the things that I'm not really gonna throw out there as an option, but it technically is an option. It would require quite a bit of
And we do
support.
we do ask for community partners and businesses to make one-time donation in a 5-year cycle. So we wouldn't be going to area businesses every year for 5 years asking for money, but we will likely do some of that. But again, it's not a large portion of what we do.
Right, and we do have, parents who will donate, which is great, and we do track sort of in-kind opportunities and, donated materials, and that's all tracked in our budget as well. So that is reflected in our overall budget, really saying these are our in-kind services, these are, this is the value of all of these things that combine. And even then, it's still a sliver.
One of the things that I'm sure you're going about, as you look at that transportation issue, I know on a survey, if I was asked to survey if I needed transportation, I'd probably say yes.
That's what
But I'm thinking back to when I was affiliated with a Head Start program, and we said we can't do transportation. But we held meetings and talked about it, and I was amazed how many neighbors stepped forward, grandparents stepped forward, and even though you don't get 100%, people can be quite creative if they need and want a service. And transportation is, we're going to see it in our school budget every year now. I mean, we already have, but I think that's the elephant in the room. So.
I have to agree, and we are doing 3 weeks of no transportation this year simply to accommodate our budget. And that'll be in May, so unfortunately we won't have the data by the time we write this grant. But we are offering a session with no transportation, and we are going to use that as data and say, this was the enrollment and this was the participation, and maybe it won't make an impact. And in which case we can amend our grant later on saying, we actually have proven we don't really need transportation. Or, the other side of it is the equity piece. Which types of students are able to attend these programs? The foundation of the 21C grant is that we are equitable for all, and we are really serving the students that need it most. So it's a huge, you're right, it's the elephant in the room, and it's a huge issue.
Fairness would say that the state and federal government, whoever contributes to this, should realize that when you can walk down the streets of St. Albans and go to a program, it's not the same as living out in West Swanton trying to get in here. There should be a dedicated funding stream, separate, but getting that is like.
They do ask us, and it is something I've generated. They do ask for what our budget looks like without food and transportation, and our state director, Emmanuel, does look at that data, and conversationally he understands, but when it comes down to the ranking of our grant structure, it's not really taken into as much consideration as I would like it to.
It's not weighted favorably.
No, thank you, that's the eloquent way to put it, yes.
And Julie, is that flexible at the state level? Where they can weight transportation?
No, I mean, they look at it, they don't look at it particularly favorably in our budget. It's such a large expense for transportation. And Beth Ann has done a fabulous job of arguing the point that it creates access and they point to other districts of similar size and rurality that don't do it. And again, we're not really sure. We're gonna be looking at the numbers to see, what our neighboring districts are doing that are rural, and how many, and do they have 155 kids in that school, or?
And again, what are the demographics of the kids that are attending?
They're all kids with families that are able to, have reliable vehicles and have the ability to go and pick up their kids at the end of the day. Or not, we don't know, but we can ask the questions and do our own look, examine that information ourselves.
Well, I realize that it's way over time for all of you, and I don't have to stay. There's not much. But I really appreciate your time and your ears tonight.
So, just one thing, by the way, thank you. It's a lot of information, a lot to run.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah, I don't know how you do it all. But do we have will we know when we have some final numbers for what we're looking at in terms of adding that to the general line?
Yeah, when we get together next I think we'll have some scenarios, but it's still early in the process. I think that's kind of the challenge is we have to.
Say by February.
That's when the application goes in. So
Okay.
by February, we will have a budget that has what our local share in it. It doesn't necessarily mean, it may be Medicaid funding, right? We use a lot of Medicaid funding for after school before our BESER payment. And we had a lot of in-kind opportunities, so maybe we were paying teachers and staff for a certain period of time because their workday went until a certain time period, and so those expenses also went toward our match. So it wasn't just an extra amount.
Well, I just want to
Yeah.
say, again, I know that there was some options there in terms of like what we would potentially do, like decrease it, keep it the same, but I can't imagine not supporting growing that program to support what it's doing for the district right now. And like how many, again, we're not St. Albans, like more spread out, so I think like that's something that I'll speak for myself, I'd like us to continue to grow, and so whatever we need to do, given some of the budget positions. So, thank you.
I appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Beth Ann.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
Next on the agenda is policy annual review for action, which would be the E1 Title I Part A, LEA, parent and family engagement.
So honestly, this is the quickest thing you're gonna do all evening. We have had this policy, it's a mandated federal policy. We brought it to you a couple of years ago. We had a whole corrective action because the old model policy at the Vermont School Board Association didn't match the new federal requirements. So we updated this last fall, you reviewed it, and it's, we just have to do that every year. We've decided October is the month. In this, there were a few small things we changed. We took out thought exchange because we're not purchasing that in future years. We changed the years in it. That's really it. We didn't make any changes. The process of how we engage families through Title I, and of course, each school has their own procedural plan that, you hear we had the Highgate Spaghetti Dinner last year, we have the literacy nights, and we have math nights and STEM nights, and you're having a carnival thing. All of that is part of our community engagement plan. But this mandated policy, we just need to make sure we review every year. It's a requirement within the policy itself. And it is all set to be approved. It's not adopted, it's already an adopted policy, we just make a motion that we reviewed it.
So you want a motion to review or a motion to
Absolutely.
approve?
We don't actually need a motion, it's just nice to have. And we have, it's just important that it's reviewed and it's brought to the board every year. And we tell you what I will put in the minutes, what the changes were.
Motion
So
to,
you can make a motion to approve the revised policy if you like.
I make a motion to approve the revised policy.
You may.
Yes, you can. I know, just getting there. I was like, yes, you can. Rennick's the first. We have a second, please.
I'll second.
Thank you, Megan. Any thoughts or comments on Peter?
Just maybe a correction under implementation, you've got the school years. That last one, you've got 2022 to 2024. I think that's supposed to be the 2023 to 2024 school year.
I will fix that. I thought Kosha caught all of those. So that's basically what the amendment is we changed the dates and anything like how we're engaging families. We took out thought exchange and just had survey, for example. Thank you for catching that, Peter.
Anybody else? All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. We're at 8-0-1.
Thank you, everybody.
agenda? Toby joined on at 5:22.
Yeah, 6:22.
Or
Because that was
6:22,
Central
yeah,
Time.
6:22.
I got it.
All right. Future agenda items, Arts Department update, Athletics update, Communications update, Act 127 and revenue, excuse me, budget, fall data and transportation. And then the next future board meeting will be November 14th at the MVU Library at 6 p.m.
Jim, before Peter mentioned this, gotta be on my toes here. I would like to request, well, first let me say how pleased I am to see you here tonight. It's always nice to see central office, so we know they're still alive and well. Some of them we see almost too much, but some we don't see at all. But anyway, I would be curious in 2 or 3 minutes or less, what are the challenges that you're working on right now?
Challenges?
No, anything you want to share.
She's got a list. I don't know what you can say.
Did you want her to hear it now or put it on for a future agenda?
I would like to share it right now since she's sat here for 2 hours very attentively.
I think, given that I am focused on our behavior systems, I suppose there are challenges within that. And I think that, similar to any district and similar to anywhere in the state and the country, we're hearing more about, the stressors that students are experiencing and families. So that's the work that I'm doing right now. Mostly so far this year have been working closely with MVU on some of their systems, picking up where we left off last year, developing some goal areas and starting that work.
And I think we've all at times in our board meetings, we hear from Julie, all of the changes the state is looking at with all the services and special services and funding and all those different things. And, we get real busy doing our things as a school board, but I know you're back there working hard, but I hadn't seen you for a while, so I said, hopefully we'll.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of changes in special ed. I think we've talked about that along the way. And so those pieces are coming right along. We've got a really good core team of people that Wendy and I meet with weekly that are working to implement those changes and in our systems in the buildings in terms of the rules. So that's going really well, I would say. Yeah.
So you feel it's all doable?
Yeah, I do.
Thank you.
Yeah, glasses half full.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jen.
You're welcome. Would anybody like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting at 8:07 p.m.?
So moved.
Peter's the first.
It's funny, I wrote that down already.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Joanne. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries 801.